Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So this is going to be a fairly short video. I just wanted to share a link. It's down in the description to a YouTube video coming out of Bloomberg Television. It's very short. It's only about a minute and a half. I'm going to play a little bit of it for you here. This is talking about the neutral interest rate. And now this confirms what it is that I have been very suspicious of over the last few years. And that is that the elevated inflation expectation has been pulling the neutral interest rate ever higher. As that neutral interest rate moves its way up, it gets ever closer to the Fed funds rate, which is making the economy far less restricted than anybody had ever given any kind of consideration for. So this video actually describes it very much like I have been trying to share with everybody here on the channel. So listen to this.
The Federal Reserve is expected to deliver a 25 basis point rate cut, signaling a resumption of the easing cycle that was interrupted in December of 2024. But is this good news? Well, that depends on a couple things. Top on the list is whether or not the rate cut could reignite inflation. Chairman Powell has long contended that the neutral rate, which is the undefined level of interest rate that would be neither stimulative nor restrictive, is somewhere considerably lower than the current level.
All right. So now this is the problem that the Federal Reserve was facing for many years after the great financial crisis, is that the Fed funds rate had hit the lower bound of zero and the neutral interest rate had fallen very close to zero, meaning that when the Fed drops interest rates, and they could not drop interest rates any further, but when they had dropped it into zero, they could not get far enough below neutral to actually stimulate the economy. So the goal over the last decade or more has been to raise that neutral interest rate in order for the Federal Reserve to regain their ammo to stimulate the economy when they go and drop rates. In the meantime, if the neutral interest rate moves ever closer to that Fed funds rate, this is where the economy becomes less restricted. Bang.
What's interesting is that the perception of where that level is has risen over the last few years. Perhaps there was a widespread underestimating of the resilience of the American economy, or perhaps it's the inflationary pressures of the uncontrolled deficit spending, but something seems to be driving up the...
Right, see, it's like questioning, why is this economy so resilient? What's going on here? It's because the economy is far less restricted than anybody had considered it.
Market's belief of where the neutral rate is. So what are the implications? Well, if the economy proves it can continue expanding in this higher rate environment, then there's reason to believe that these higher rates will stay. That means mortgage rates, car loans, and credit card rates may not get back to the low levels we were used to for a long time, if ever. It feels eerily reminiscent of the 80s and 90s, where rates were persistently much higher than what we were used to, and a double-digit mortgage rate was not uncommon.
Right.
What this means is that hard choices for the consumer could lie ahead.
Extra high, extra long for an extended period of time. They were going to keep these interest rates elevated. Even though we have the idea of them lowering rates going into the future, if that neutral interest rate continues to rise based on the inflation expectations, whether it's from tariffs or some other fabricated scenario that comes into our existence, if that neutral interest rate continues to rise, the economy will be far less restricted than anybody had thought, even if we have elevated rates.
As we adjust to a much different interest rate world than the one we've grown accustomed to.
All right. That link is down in the description for you guys. And I wanted to share that with you because this has essentially been part of my theory for quite some time. I mean, I've done many videos talking about the neutral interest rate, keeping your eye on the neutral interest rate, and that being the focal point of the entire monetary policy when it comes to interest rate adjustments. If the Fed is to adjust rates, into what relation is that to the neutral interest rate? To understand that that is getting smaller, that spread between the neutral rate and the Fed funds rate is getting less, that means the economy is far less restricted. This has to be internalized. You have to think about it in this fashion, because the people who are out there saying, oh, the Fed needs to cut by this many points, they never seem to talk about the neutral interest rate. Do they even know that the neutral interest rate is rising, or that the idea that the economy is far less restricted? This is where a lot of people are misunderstanding what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing with their monetary policy. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you. Very quick video. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.